Welcome to the Hair Metal Podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. The Hair Metal Podcast looks back at thrash, glam, and pop metal band music, events, and everything else that heavily influenced the 80s and early 90s hair metal movement. We are proud to discuss the music, the lifestyles, the nostalgia of 80s hair metal. This is Hair Metal Podcast episode 20, 80s rock metal bands that should have been a lot bigger. My name is Kevin. I'll be your host, but hey, I need some help here. Before we head on over to the Hollywood Sunset Strip, hit up Gazzari's, the Troubadour, the Roxy, the Cat House, the Whiskey Go-Go, maybe get some drinks, some late night dinner at the Rainbow Bar and Grill or Rock and Roll Denny's. I'd like to introduce my guest for this episode of the Hair Metal Podcast. Please welcome Mr. Mike Simmer. What's up, buddy?
What's up, Kev? How you doing this evening?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me, man. You answered the call in the Hair Metal Podcast. I was looking for some people to help me out here. What drove you to do this?
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Honored to be here, actually. This is just something I've been discussing for 35 years, ever since the hair metal scene. And I was always witnessing it from afar, being on the East Coast. Always dreamt that one day that I would be cool enough to make it over to Sunset Strip, and just was a huge fan of the music for a long time. And all the Facebook groups, all that you wanted someone to help you out here, and I said, I think that I'd be able to do that.
Well, I appreciate that, man. And tell us a little bit about yourself and your hair metal fandom.
Born and raised in Pittsburgh, live in Philadelphia now. Was a guitar player for years, always into music. When I was growing up, I was raised on Motown and funk and things like that. And once I heard "Come On, Feel the Noise," the pendulum swung the whole other way.
You and me both, brother.
Yeah, it was. I was thinking, I mean, I never heard Black Sabbath or anything like that until years later. Iron Maiden, anything like that. I always discovered that after hair metal. So once I heard "Come On, Feel the Noise," then it was Motley Crue and Rat, and then sort of dug my claws into other things like Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath. So I was kind of late to the game with a lot of metal because I grew up on other types of music.
Gotcha. Yeah, that Quite Right album, that turned the table for me. But you also deal with music recently in a job. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I teach a music history class for a 7th grade. I'm a middle school teacher. I also do writing for the school as well, and I teach a public speaking class. My 7th grade music class is one of the most popular for the kids. It basically covers from the blues of the 30s all the way up till about the early 2000s. And we cover just about everything. And we teach it as a social studies class. What was happening culturally, how the culture affected the music, how the music affected the culture of that time. So right now we're just getting into the 1970s.
That's fantastic, man. Well, I am happy to have you aboard here and talk, as I said here, Hair Metal Podcast, episode 20, the 80s rock and metal bands that should have been bigger. And this was kind of brought together. We were kind of talking about some bands which have made this list, ones that should have been a lot bigger. And also a discussion happened in our Hair Metal Podcast fandom group. So if you're not part of that already, please head on over to Facebook and check out the Hair Metal Podcast fandom group there. And if you're listening to this podcast, please jump over to YouTube and watch the video, because we're going to have a bunch of cool slides talking about the bands that should have been a lot bigger. And of course, this is the Hair Metal Podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network, and we are going to be covering a lot of 80s metal. Very excited about that. But one of the things I like to have a little fun with there, Mike, is I always like to have our guests wear some type of fun t-shirt. Maybe there's a little bit of story behind it. What shirt are you wearing? And is there a story behind it? So
I'm rocking the Rainbow Bar and Grill shirt.
Nice.
It was growing up, like I said, being on the East Coast, and the Sunset Strip may as well have been on the moon for me growing up. I was lucky enough to finally get to the Rainbow in 2021. And I liked it so much that I went back in the summer of 2022.
Nice.
It was.
Did you get the shirt there, or did you get it elsewhere?
Got the shirt there.
I should have done that the last time I was there. I didn't even think about asking for a darn shirt.
I got shirt, matches, coasters, anything that I could get my hands on, I took.
If you spend enough time at the Rainbow Bar and Grill, you would see Lemmy Lemmy Kilmister from Motorhead, because that was like a second home for him. He'd be playing the video games or whatever it is, the video poker or whatever it was that was there. Yeah. So yeah. And he was a staple of that. And they still hold concerts there in the parking lot. I think there's one coming up in 2024. I know Sebastian Bach's going to be there. They're going to have, I think, Eddie Trunk's going to come out again for that. He's been hosting those. And so they still make a big deal about it. And it's still there. It's still happening. Food's not the greatest food, but it's still fun.
The pizza was surprisingly good. It was surprisingly good. I thought they were bragging about the pizza, and I thought, being from the East Coast, is it going to be as good? And it was surprisingly good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm wearing my DAD shirt, which we will be getting into a little bit later. And I have a little story behind this shirt, but I'm going to share it for later. One of my favorite hair metal bands from the 80s. That didn't quite hit over here, but they do have quite a popular following. And I got this at the concert I went to last year when they played in Australia. So I was there to see that. That was a great show. Nice. So. Nice. Have you seen any recent concerts lately? Anything, of the era, maybe?
Not of the, of the era, we saw just in the past couple of years, we saw like Guns, Faster Pussycat, Tom Kiefer Cinderella. Dokken we saw, which was an experience, was rather odd experience when George Lynch came out for the last two songs.
Wow.
Which we were wondering, what was he doing the entire rest of the show? We saw Sebastian Bach a few years ago, just as Sebastian Bach. And I always try to catch Jeff Tate when he comes here as much as I possibly can.
Nice.
We have a place here in Philly that caters to that type of music, that sort of scene. That we always go to.
Before I moved back to California in 2019, I was living in Georgia, and there was some great venues out there. I've seen a lot, like Faster Pussycat, Enough's Enough. I saw the versions of Bang Tango and Bullet Boys. I'll just put it that way. Yes. I saw Jackal. And then when I came back out here to California, I saw Iron Maiden, which was really cool. And then last year, when I was visiting Melbourne, because my wife's from there, we saw Guns N' Roses on their rescheduled tour of Australia and New Zealand, and that was a lot of fun. Recently, though, I've seen a yacht rock band twice, two different types of yacht rock band, but I was in Australia, and the Ricky Rackman was doing his 1 Foot in the Gutter spoken word tour. And I've been listening to his podcast, the Hollywood Cat House podcast, and he was promoting that. And I happened to be in Australia in Melbourne and went to go see a show, and he's really cool. I got to hang out and talk with him, and my wife and I got a picture with him up there, and that's the picture up there on the left. And then the band that we saw was Yacht Rock Revival. Been a lot of fun listening to yacht rock music and seeing them play live. And then the band on the right, the top and the bottom, that is a very popular, they've been around for over 30 years now, a band called Chocolate Starfish in Australia. Okay. They're very popular in Australia. They open up for a lot of festivals. And my friend Zach actually is their guitar player, and I met him through my wife because they have mutual friends. And we saw them play a show, and that particular show was awesome because they did the entire Meatloaf discography from Bat Out of Hell 1 and 2. I'm forgetting the gentleman's name that wrote all those songs, but I
forget his name too.
Yeah, but even did some songs that he did from other projects, but they did all of the Meatloaf material, and it was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. So
summer of 22, when we were in LA, we did get to see. It was always one of my dreams to not just go to the Rainbow, but also go to the Whiskey. And we saw Yachtly Crew at the Whiskey.
I saw them in Ventura. They were fun. I actually liked them better than the Australian one.
They're blast. And the funny thing is I know a lot of hair metal fans who are addicted to yacht rock. I don't know what the crossover is.
That's because there's a lot of influence of those artists from that music, Yeah. And so we've been enjoying our yacht rock reviews and such. I had tickets to see Wasp this summer, but Blackie had to cancel the tour because he had to have back surgery or something like that.
We saw that. I believe it was last year. I think I saw that.
Yeah, Armored Saint was going to open up for it. I'd never seen them before, so
they opened up when we saw them here in Philadelphia. It was a really good show.
Cool, really cool. Well, let's go ahead and let's get into the main topic here. All right, Hair Metal Podcast, episode 20. 80s rock and metal bands that should have been bigger. Now, keep in mind, we are discussing more of the hair metal era. Some of these might bleed into the early 90s because some of them were just getting in right on the coattails before they were yanked out underneath them, basically. But I did find a article, and that article is called 80 Lesser Known Hard Rock Metal Bands from the 80s That Should Have Been Bigger. And when I was looking at it, Mike, I was surprised that there was a lot of them that I had forgotten about, dude.
That happens a lot. I say, oh my God. Not only I'll forget their names, and then I'll go on YouTube and look up their stuff and be like, oh, now I remember them.
Yeah. This is the article here that I have here, and I decided to pick a few here that I thought that we should discuss here. And the first one that I put the slide out of order here, so let me get it. Tiger Tails. This was UK's version of Poison. Musically, their debut was much heavier than Poison's. The band featured vocalist Stevie James with a Z on vocals, who had more of a gruff voice than that contributed to a band sounding less like bubblegum glam band and more like a sleaze rock band in vein of LA Guns or Faster Pussycat. Young and Crazy was a fantastic debut, and the band parted ways with Stevie James after this release. Do you remember Tiger Tails?
I mean, barely. I mean, they probably were on Headbangers Ball real late. Like, that at 1:55, they were probably threw them on at the very end.
I think they had a song called Love Bomb Baby, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so many of these bands, that we'll talk about, their look was either advantageous to them or their downfall.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Tiger Tails their look was a downfall.
One of the other bands that was on this list is Danger Danger, released their self-titled debut in 1989 with the help of MTV, had the success of the single Naughty Naughty. They also had the song Bang Bang. The band mixed
theme there. We're sensing
what's that?
We were sensing a theme there.
Yes. They didn't release their second album until 1991, and by then the 80s metal genre was already in decline due to the changing taste in music. Currently, the band continues to record and perform, and though they've had a few lineup changes over the years, including different vocalists, they still had a devoted fan base. I noticed they have a huge following in Japan. They tend to go to a lot of shows there. But one of the things that I liked about this band, Mike, is that all their songs were about girls and getting laid.
Yeah, I mean, well, that gets right into the 80s. I mean, that tracks with that time period. It's so I don't know what it is about that Japanese audience. I mean, God bless them that they're keeping so much of this stuff alive. Yeah. But I don't know why that stuff translated so well over to that side of the world. I don't know. I mean, there's still talk about Mr. Big is huge there.
Mr. Big is huge over there. Yes. Yeah. Indonesia and stuff like that. Yeah.
I don't know why that part of the world was so hooked on that type of music and remains that way.
They had their thing, so God bless them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
One of the other bands this article mentioned is a band I liked, Gorky Park, out of Russia. After the fall of communism in the USSR, the Russian band quickly embraced the Western culture of rock and metal. They were signed to Mercury Records and released their debut album in 1989. The band released Bang as their first single and was the first Russian band to be featured on MTV. They also received radio airplay with singles like Try to Find Me and Peace in Our Time. And this is when I remember seeing them perform live for the first time. They performed at the Moscow Music Peace Festival with Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, Skid Row, Cinderella, Ozzy Osbourne, the Scorpions. I actually did a podcast about that Moscow Music Peace Festival, Mike, with our good friend Johnny K on the anniversary of it, because I actually did the pay-per-view on MTV to watch it. And I still have the original VHS tape I
Wow.
recorded it from.
Wow. Somewhere around, I think I still have the original Live Aid on VHS.
Wow. Do you remember Gorky Park?
I do, and I remember the Moscow Music Festival too. And correct me if I'm wrong, the Moscow Music Festival was put on because somebody owed somebody some money, or somebody got.
No, what happened was the manager Doc McGee,
Yes.
for all of these bands got busted for cocaine trafficking.
Yes.
And he, to get out of jail, he said that he would do a community service.
Yeah.
He put it. This was supposed to be an anti-drug and alcohol awareness thing, and everyone but Motley Crue was like plastered in doing drugs.
Right. You know,
because they were trying to get clean.
If Motley Crue's the sober ones, you may have some issues.
Yeah. Yes. The next band this article mentioned is Icon. And I know who they are. I remember a few of their things, but they released their debut album in 84. The band showed extreme talent and promise for the future. Then in 85, they released the appropriately named Night of the Crime, because it's simply a crime that this album didn't top the hard rock metal charts at the time. If any band had everything that it needed to hit, it was Icon, one of the best albums that came out in the 80s. It's criminally underrated. The band seems to suffer from a lack of exposure problems. And it kind of goes on to some of the other bands that they toured with. Do you remember Icon?
That one's a new one to me. I do not know them. I'll have to check them out, because I don't know the album cover. Usually, I was working at a record store in the mid '80s in my misguided teenage years, and I would sometimes just recognize the cover. I don't recognize that cover at all.
Yeah, I don't remember them at all at the time. And obviously they weren't promoted correctly or what have you. But also, I didn't hear about them until I started diving back deep into hair metal back in the early 2000s, when finally grunge was dead and I was getting sick of rap metal. So I was like, oh, what's Icon? And it was playing on one of those hair metal stations on some internet radio station I was listening to. I'm like, damn, these guys are good. So
they still around at all, or no?
It says here that they had a album. What was it? Hold on. They did have something in '89, but that was the most recent. So I doubt they're together anymore.
So they're probably all working at Guitar Center.
Probably, yeah. All right, the last band that this article mentions, and I completely agree with this choice here, is Jet Boy. Originally based in San Francisco, Jet Boy relocated to LA in the 80s to be part of the growing glam hair metal scene at the time. Jet Boy fused everything from metal, punk, and rockabilly into their sound. Their debut album, Feel the Shake, 1988, was a modest success, but it took the band 2 years to release a follow-up, and by then the scene had begun to disappear. Jet Boy would go on to release album Damnation in 90, and they had several others in 97, 99, and they did release a recent album in 2019. They have kind of reunited and gotten together. This was one of the Cat House Hollywood house bands, basically. Right. I know that for a fact that Ricky Rackman loved these guys. They were kind of the band's band. You know what I mean?
Right.
Bands, all other popular bands loved Jet Boy. They would have Jet Boy open up for them. They would go to see Jet Boy at these small clubs. They had a huge following. Chicks dug him as well. Another good band that should have gotten a lot bigger.
Yeah, you take a look at those two pictures, and there's so many bands of that era, like I said about the image, and it looks like they were kind of stuck. They were stuck between. They're stuck between. On the right, it looked like they were in Guns N' Roses, and the left, it looked like they were just straight hair metal. So it may be an issue that they just were stuck between two looks.
Yeah, two of the guys would rock mohawks. At least the lead singer did. And I thought that was cool, But it was like, it was kind of hair metal-y, which was kind of cool. But they had a great sound. There was a rockabilly, there was blues, punk. They just and they had such good stage energy as well. They were awesome. So yeah. So before we get into the main topic of our picks, it's time to look at what our group in the Hair Metal Podcast group said. Because I shared an article, what rock metal band should have been bigger, and our fellow members did not disappoint. My buddy BJ Savage says, Bang Tango, LA Guns, Sea Hags, Faster Pussycat, King's X, Badlands, Lynch Mob, Death Angel, and Trouble.
Yeah.
And I asked because I had not heard of Trouble, and he put a link to a YouTube video, and gotta say they sounded really, really good.
There's so
What's
many
that?
bands of that. There's so many bands of that era that just sounded so good.
Yeah.
And
King's X is always. Now you're not a fan of King's X, right? Or is it?
Not a fan of King's X. I never dug them. I never kind of understood them. And another band I was always kind of scratching my head about, what do they want to be? Was it prog rock? Was it what exactly did they want to be?
I think that's might have been why that would held them back. But I got a chance to finally see them live in Georgia back in 2018, and God, they were really, really good. But yeah, they they had a certain look that kind of got attention for the late 80s, early 90s. But I think they just kind of became, they have a hardcore fan base that just follows them anywhere, and they've been playing around ever since. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're doing something right. They've been around forever.
Yeah,
they're still out there touring, so they're doing something right.
My friend Queenie Meadows says I'd add Dangerous Toys, Blackboard Jungle, and Billionaire. I had not heard of Billionaire.
Yeah, going back to the previous post about Badlands. Which I thought would have been huge, but I read an article recently about the lead singer who died and had some really troubled last couple years.
Yeah, I got a chance to see them play live, and I was blown away how good Badlands was.
Yeah.
And the singer fell ill and had some issues, and that kind of created a cloud over the legacy of that band, and reason why they hadn't re-released any of their albums before. And Jakey Lee was just fantastic.
Jake's a monster. I mean, he's an absolute monster, and someone who another head scratcher of why couldn't he have made it work wherever he went? Is he difficult to work with, or does he? I've never heard a bad word said about him, but for some reason he just can't make it work somewhere.
Yeah,
I mean, think about he was in Rat. Then he went to Ozzy. So
Yeah. Paul Jude said Cinderella should have been almost as big as Crew or GNR, and I thought this was a good pick. They were popular. They still are a lot popular than some of the bands we're going to talk about, but they were always like opening up for the big bands. They were like the B band, not the A band. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But man, Tom Kiefer was like a blues guitar master genius, great lyricist.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, maybe the name held them back. I don't know, but they should have been bigger.
Philly band, right? So, and there's actually a girl that I work with who is of our age group, and she saw all them. She saw them at a place actually near my house that's no longer there. And she saw Cinderella there. She saw Bon Jovi there. It was the place to go. And Cinderella was always the biggest draw. And I think, taking a look back at Night Songs, they were a blues rock band. And they came up in that era where their manager probably told them, listen, you got to get the hairspray, you got to get the glam look. And they never fell into that category. It just wasn't that type of music. And
if you closed your eyes and listened to their music, it's just like, wow.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a glam band.
I mean, they were MTV darlings, but they just didn't. They just could not get that. We're going to open up and sell out arenas. They would be opening up for the band that would do that.
Mm-hmm.
But they were just almost there. My friend Mark Walker says Taiketo, good band. I remember them. They had the hit Forever Young. They harmonized well. They were pretty good. I do remember them. Were you fans of Taiketo?
I don't know much about them. I do remember that was you said Forever Young. I do remember that one, and I see that on Sirius a lot. That they do play that, but that was like they were sort of deep. And remember, when I grew up in Pittsburgh, our exposure to this type of hair metal was we did not have a radio station that played any of this. So Headbangers Ball was our Bible, and after that we would go to the record store to see if we could find any. So we didn't have a record or a station. We didn't have a KNAC. We didn't have K-Rock. We didn't have any of that. We had a radio station that specialized in classic rock. So if you wanted to hear Freebird for the 1 millionth time, that was the radio station to go to.
We were lucky enough to have an LA band. I think it was K-Nack that played all that stuff, and they would actually hold like, I think it was a festival called the Big Weenie Roast, and it would be a big hair metal thing, and then it kind of evolved into grunge later on. But they would always promote what was big, and then of course, as you mentioned, our Bible Headbangers Ball. So yeah,
our radio station in Pittsburgh, when a band of that level would come through, your Rats, your Motley Crue, the radio station would come out and introduce the band, and they would get booed mercilessly. The radio station would get booed because everybody knew you've never played any of their songs, not one of their songs.
Yeah.
And you're coming out sucking up the limelight, introducing them when you have no interest in playing them whatsoever.
All right, man, let's go ahead and get into our main topic. Let's share our picks. All right. So what I asked Mike here to do was give me your top 5 picks of the 80s metal bands that should have been bigger and 3 honorable mentions. So we're going to start with your honorable mentions first. All right.
So let's start really small, right? So growing up in Pittsburgh, there was a local band. Let's go here. Let's go.
Well, hold on. You want to do that one first instead of this one?
I go do Night Ranger. So
we got to talk about Night Ranger because I asked you to talk. I usually to ask a band that had not been big, and Mike, last I checked, Night Ranger was pretty big, man.
Night Ranger was pretty big, but listen, let me tell you why. And I was a huge Night Ranger fan, right? A huge Night, and still am.
You did send me a note. You said this comes with an explanation. I'm like, I can't wait to hear this.
Comes with an explanation, and I'll tell you the explanation. They should have been bigger than they were. Big band. I've always felt that what killed this band was Sister Christian, and I'll tell you why. Everybody who listened to Sister Christian, and I grew up when this came out, when Sister Christian came out, I was working at the record store. So people came to buy the Night Ranger album, thinking the Night Ranger album contained songs that were similar to Sister Christian. And then they played the album, and then you Can Still Rock in America, Don't Tell Me You Love Me, which were a little bit harder, and that turned those people off. And then people who didn't like Sister Christian were never exposed to Don't Tell Me You Love Me and You Can Still Rock in America. So they didn't buy the album either, right? So they were kind of stuck between, we don't know what we want to be. And then I read an article recently that they were getting beat up by the record company all the time about where's the next Sister Christian? Where's the next Sister Christian? So they lost their kind of hard edge. And Brad Gillis and Jeff Watson were phenomenal guitar players. I mean, just off the charts, phenomenal guitar players. And I think they tried so hard to find that next Sister Christian that that song was like, it was both their success and demise. Because
that's the same thing that happened with Mr. Big with their ballad.
Yeah.
Their ballad killed them too. And Addicted to That Rush got kind of pushed underneath and the great guitar work on the rest of the song. So, just a quick little blurb here on Night Ranger. They're from San Francisco. They formed in 1979. They gained popularity in the 80s with a series of albums and singles. Guitarist Brad Gillis and drummer Kelly Keegy have been the band's most consistent members, though bassist Jack Blades performed on all but one of their albums. Other current members in the band include guitarist Kerry Kelly and keyboardist Eric Levy. And their best known songs, of course, are Sister Christian, Rockin' America, and Don't Tell Me You Love Me. I got to tell you, though, and my wife and I were discussing this, Sister Christian got ruined by Boogie Nights for me. All I can hear is Alfred Molina putting out firecrackers. Just like American Girl by Tom Petty got ruined because of Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you make a good point. A song, in a way, can definitely derail, especially if it's a ballad and you're not producing that ballad again.
Yeah.
And you're not showcasing that, because Rockin' America is a great anthem song.
Great song, and the solo on there kicks. I mean, the dual guitar of Gillis and Watson was off the charts, and people bought that Sister Christian album or that album thinking, it's all just a bunch of ballads. And then when they played the first song, Sister Christian, I think was the last song on side one. I don't know why I remember that, but it started off with You Can Still Rock in America, and people probably were thinking wait, this doesn't sound anything like Sister Christian.
Yeah.
So that's I think that was the downfall.
I see your point, and yes, they could have been bigger, but yes, I think Sister Christian just kind of buried that. So now the next choice you have is a local band that I had never heard of. That band is called Action with an X, Axtion. Tell us about Action. As far as I know, they're out of Pittsburgh, but that's all I got.
That's out of Pittsburgh. Were huge in the 80s. Came out with "Look Out for the Night," which is an epic song. I think it's about 7 minutes long. And they were huge in Pittsburgh. There was a local college radio station in the 80s out of the University of California, of Pennsylvania, that used to play local metal, and Action was always at the top of the list. Sad story about them. They were basically a tax write-off for the record company. They never were promoted. The guitarist, Darren Lazzari, he went to LA, tried to make it big there, actually auditioned for Ozzy, and he said that he played with Ozzy. Ozzy would sing, Ozzy would turn and cross his hands and look at him. And he played about 2 or 3 songs with Ozzy, went home, waited by the phone for the phone call, and never got it. And then just sort of moved back to Pittsburgh. They did a reunion show, I'm going to say about 5 years ago.
Did you go?
No, it was when I wasn't hit. I didn't even actually know about it. I didn't know about it till later. I would have definitely went. I would have 100% went. Just a really cool band. You can hear from the production, it's real raw.
If you had to, I hate doing this, but if you had to compare their sound to something, can you give us an idea of what they sounded like?
Queensryche, I would say. It's very Queensryche, early Queensryche. Your Hold On to the Flame, that's
okay. So I put up 9 songs here off this album, Look Out for the Night. Road Running, Spread the Action, Hold Me Tight, Fury of the Tempest, Precious Rock, Look Out for the Night, Your Number's Up, Shoot the Stars, and Stand Up for What You Believe in. What would you say is their iconic song?
Look Out for the Night it's a huge song. Really guitar driven. Like I said, it starts out really slow. It's 7 minutes long. It's on YouTube. Yeah. It's 7 minutes long. Great guitar work, but you can hear it's raw. You can hear that it's not produced well. If someone would have taken that album and just reproduced it, it would have been huge.
Gotcha. Huge. That's too bad that they were a tax write-off, and that's what happened there, because they have the look, they have the sound. Great album cover, by the way. I love that. They had all the pieces to play with, but just didn't happen. That's too bad.
And being in Pittsburgh didn't help. Being in Pittsburgh didn't help either. I mean, everything was happening 3,000 miles away.
They should have come to Hollywood and put up flyers, man. That's what they should have done. All right, guy. So next one you have here, your third and final honorable mention, and I agree with you here, is Hanoi Rocks, a Finnish band that was formed in 1979. They were the first Finnish band to chart in UK. They're also popular in Japan. By 84, the band was considered to be on the verge of international breakthrough when they released their first major album for CBS, headed for their US tour. The tour, however, was cut short when their drummer, Nicholas Razzle Dingley, died in a drunk driving incident that famously known Vince Neil was behind the wheel. In December of 84, the band never recovered from the loss and announced their split in June of 85. I want to ask you about this. First of all, their most known songs are 11th Street Kids, Up and Around the Bend, which is a CCR cover, and Tragedy. I know it sucks to lose a band member. I don't understand why they couldn't replace Razzle and continue. Yeah, band members have died. Band members have died before, and they've gone. The only thing I can think of is if it's like if Tom Kiefer died, yes, I get it. You don't go on with Cinderella, but no offense to Razzle, he was the drummer.
I think maybe one of the reasons was, and it's just total guess, is because they were from so far away. So because they were a Finnish band and they were in LA, I think maybe they became a lot closer because they were all that they knew.
But I'm sure there was drummers falling out of trees and party windows that could have landed on on there and played, and they could have continued.
I mean, you would think so. I mean, they released "Going Up Around the Bend," which had a lot of MTV airplay, which is on Headbangers a lot. And you would think that somehow the band would say, "Listen, we're right there. We're right there." And like you said, it's the drummer, which, no disrespect to Razzle, but it's a drummer. But it was probably just so traumatic for them. I don't know, but all they had to do was say, "Let's just continue on with the legacy and throw in another drummer," like you said. I mean, you could swing a dead cat and find a drummer.
And Hanoi Rocks is, we mentioned it earlier, Hanoi Rocks is one of those bands. A lot of the popular bands at that time loved Hanoi Rocks. And they could have opened up and toured constantly, opening up for other bands until maybe they got some more momentum. Yeah. Then they could have started headlining their own tours. I just don't understand.
Awesome front man. They could have went right into it. And they were sort of had the LA Guns N' Roses kind of look.
Yeah.
Before LA Guns and Guns N' Roses.
And Michael Monroe is not only is that a cool name, but he's a great front man,
Yeah.
He ended up going solo though. So there you go. Well, good choices for your top 3 there. But let's go ahead and get into your top 5. So the first one, I'd heard of these guys. This is Honeymoon Suite. They're a Canadian rock band formed in 1981 in Niagara Falls, Ontario. The band's name was a nod to the fact that Niagara Falls is the official honeymoon capital of the world. So tell me, by the way, I guess I picked 3 songs that I believe are their top 3 songs: New Girl Now, Burning in Love, and Bad Attitude. You know a little bit more about these guys than I do. I have heard of them. I have seen a couple of their videos. Why was Honeymoon Suite number 5 for you?
So Canadian band, right? New Girl Now. I think really what it comes down to is that song, New Girl Now. They had a couple other sort of slow songs. One was Feel It Again, which was on Headbangers. Well, I think it definitely got MTV play. They just, I think they missed because they were just blah. Their look was just sort of there, right? It was very vanilla. They were sort of Loverboy Part 2. And I think that's a lot of people. That's what a lot of people thought. This is just repackaged.
Oh my God, dude! Hold on, that's funny. Loverboy Part 2. I could see their look kind of has not quite the hair metal look, and their hair's not quite the hair metal look.
Right.
But I could definitely see Loverboy Part 2.
And if you watch the New Girl Now video, and you don't know any better, you would say, "What Loverboy song is this? I never heard this song before."
Oh, that's a great comparison. I love that.
So they, and a lot of these bands, there's millions of bands, and you hear these tragic stories and everything. So they had New Girl Now, and that catapults them into their second album. They bring out Feel It Again, which was much slower, and they turned into almost like a hair metal yacht rock kind of band, right? They got real slower. And then their lead singer, he gets into a car accident. He gets into a really bad car accident right before they start working on their new album in 1987. He gets all kind of pins put in his legs. He's hospitalized, and it sort of puts them on hold. And they actually brought in Michael McDonald to write some of their songs. And then they get Ted Templeman to produce their third album.
Famous producer.
Yeah, and
Van Halen.
Yeah, and then the third album just sort of goes nowhere. They're still around. They still and the other thing
was my next question. Are they still touring in Canada?
They're still huge in Canada.
Right.
They also had a keyboard player who I think his name was Ray, who wrote their second big hit, Feel It Again. And he wrote that and just sort of disagreed with the management and pieced out, said, "I'm out of the band. I'm gone." And he was one of their chief songwriters. So he leaves, and the lead singer gets hurt and just sort of stalled. Their third album came out and just nothing came out of it. And they just sort of, I think they probably said, "Hey, listen, we're the big fish in the little Canadian pond. So let's just keep it." They
should have come to Hollywood and got the hairstylist and wardrobe stylist that Whitesnake went through. Things might have changed for them. Well, Honeymoon Suite, you're almost there, but they sound good though. So, but Loverboy Part 2.
Loverboy Part 2. Yeah.
All right, the next band that you have here, I love this pick. This is YNT.
Yeah,
Love
YNT, I think they suffered from a few things. I mean, great sound, great singer, great songs, great hooks, great vocals. I mean, "Don't Stop Running" is just a amazing song. "Summertime Girls," amazing song.
That's the song I always think of, because that's the song that you hear come
Right,
out of radio stations.
Yeah, that's the one that has the radio play. That's the one that had the Headbangers Ball play. There was also a song called "Mean Street" that was really good. They kind of came in late to the game in terms of they formed in the 70s. So by the time hair metal comes along, they're the old men in the group. Right?
They're out of Oakland, California.
Yeah, Oakland. Yeah.
Recording since '74.
Yeah, and yes, in '74. So by the time hair metal's big in '83, '84, they're long in the tooth.
Yeah.
So couple things happened to them. They had some drug issues with some members. They get fired. Then that Summertime Girls video was amazing, but you could tell they're almost like not focusing on what those guys look like. There's a lot of like comedic slapstick things that are happening that are away from the band. So they're focusing not on their look, which was so important during that time. And they didn't have a follow-up to that song. And they were begging the record company, we need a follow-up. We need a follow-up single. We have some heat on us. And the record company, from what I read, the record company was just like, we're not interested in you anymore. They just sort of moved on from them, didn't release anything. And then they tried to get out of that record deal, went to another record company, and just sort of fizzled out.
So, but they have stayed together and reformed, though, haven't they?
Yeah, the Dave Manichetti, the lead singer, it's all about him, of course. I think he was the chief songwriter. But they've had some people come in and out from drug use, and he's been the constant. You can't have it without him. And you know what also killed them? I've always said this. Their name sucks.
Yes, it does.
Their name sucks. I mean, because you're thinking, YNT, what's it stand for? And then you find out it stood for yesterday and today. Well, that was what it was. That's what their original name was. And I was always thinking, well, that's even lamer than YNT.
You know what I think held them back, to be honest with you? As much as I like their sound sounds like the late 70s arena rock.
Yes, it does.
It needed to sound more poppy, because that's what was popular. And
but Summertime Girls still feels that way.
Yeah, but the rest of their stuff, and maybe their looks a little too, I don't know.
yeah. And the name is awful. The name sucks.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. Okay, so the next band you have, and I'm glad you brought these guys up, because I knew who they were, but I'm not really that familiar. And that's Lizzie Borden, and they formed in Los Angeles in '83. And to date, the band charted on the Billboard 200, the Billboard 200 4 times. Lizzie Borden is, of course, and is more famous because of the band's lead vocalist. And they were formed in '83 by brothers Lizzie Borden, aka Gregory Charles Hargis, and Joey Scott. The band got noticed after their song "Rod of Iron" featured on the Metal Blades Massacre 4 compilation LP. Dude, I totally remember that album. That was a big deal. The band signed to Metal Blade in '84 and released their EP, Give 'Em the Axe, in May of that same year. The band is named, of course, after the notorious Lizzie Borden, a woman accused of acquitting of murder in the late 19th century. And also, too, the band was featured prominently on the rockumentary The Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, The Metal Years, directed by Penelope Spheris. I remember that. If you're a metalhead, you have to have seen that.
Had to have seen it.
One quick thing I have to mention as well, okay, is that their song "Me Against the World" was featured in the cult film Black Roses.
I don't know.
And I actually have the original VHS of that, and I also have the DVD or Blu-ray of it, the re-release. And the reason I found out of Black Roses is because one of my favorite bands, Bang Tango, had a song on that album as well. But tell me why
somebody from that movie was a metalhead. That's for sure. Yeah.
Tell me why you think this band should have been bigger.
So, the lead singer, massive talent, right? Massive talent, great voice. The problem was their look. they were stuck between glam and shock rock, right?
Yeah.
They kind of didn't know what they wanted to be, right? So the lead singer, he was kind of shocky, kind of a horror kind of thing, but didn't go the full way, right? They were featured, like you said, on Decline of Western Civilization Part 1. He came across as very likable in there, but they did a cover of Born to Be Wild that was awful on there. And it was just, I don't know why they allowed that to be released, but I think they stayed on Metal Blade for a long time, and I think that may have hurt them that they didn't go to a bigger label.
Gotcha.
They had Me Against the World was a minor hit. Then they came out with an album called Visual Lies that was huge. Their look just was, and then of course their look became passé when grunge came about.
Yeah.
And I always thought that if they would have pushed the shock and horror a little bit more, they would have been bigger.
They should have teamed up with Alice Cooper, did they not?
Yeah. Because there was nobody around except for Alice who was doing that.
Yeah.
So if he would have went all in on that. So the crazy thing now is when you see him, they're still around, by the way. And he's all in on the shock rock now. I mean, he's complete makeup and costumes, and he comes out as monsters and everything. And I thought, if he would have done that in '87, they would have been huge. They would have been huge. And they had the songs to back it up. Every shock rocker has to have the songs to back it up.
It's true.
And I felt that they had the songs, they had the talent to back it up. They had a couple people from the band die tragically. I think one died in a car accident. So that hurt them too. But they were stuck between.
Are the brothers still together?
I think so. I could be wrong, but I think so. It may just be Lizzie in the band now. But if you check out some YouTube stuff, they do all the European metal festivals.
Okay.
It's huge over there. And if you just check out their live show, it's amazing. I mean, the costumes that he puts on, the makeup that he puts on is just amazing. And he can still hit the high notes.
Nice.
He's got to be pushing 60.
Good for him.
Yeah.
All right. The next band you have, I'm glad you brought these guys to the table, is TNT. They're a Norwegian band formed in '82. The band had released 14 studio albums, 3 EPs, and 4 live albums while going through numerous lineup changes since its formation. Guitarist Ronnie Litekro is the only consistent member of TNT. The band has sold between 4 to 5 million albums worldwide as of 2016. Known songs are 10,000 Lovers in One, 7 Seas, and Everyone's a Liar. TNT, give me some love. Why you chose them?
Yeah, so a lot of these bands on my list had success, but I always felt that they should have been much bigger. So this band I was a huge fan of. Kings of Seven Seas comes out and got some. That was off their first album, Knights of the New Thunder, and it was a big hit on MTV. Got some legit radio play. The guitar sounds is so different than anything else. It's got this really crunchy distortion to it that just sounds different.
I wonder what he plays through. That's interesting.
It's really crunchy, and I always thought that one of the things that hurt them was their singer was too good.
Really,
and he. When you think of the songs that we think of in the hair metal genre that you sing along to, like Living on a Prayer, things like that, you couldn't sing along to these songs. He was that good of a singer.
Oh, wow.
He had like a crazy octave range. And it was also very well guitar driven, because that Ronnie Litekro, who's the only member who's been through the whole thing, he's the one who controls everything. I'm sure, even to this day. Big in Japan, huge in Scandinavia. I found a really great, interesting tidbit about it. They released an album in '89 called Intuition. No, I'm sorry, Tell No Tales. Tell No Tales first. Intuition came after, but Tell No Tales was released in '87. It's the best-selling album that year in Scandinavia, and it outsold Michael Jackson and Def Leppard in '87.
Wow.
In Scandinavia. So
they had a following for sure.
Yeah, and they still do. They still have a following. Everyone's a Star, great song. 10,000 Lovers in One, great song. And then they just, they took a break. So here's and if you just think of the timelines adding up, right? So they released that album in 89, right? And then they released the next album. They don't release the next album until 92. And of course, between 89 and 92, Nevermind comes out. So they needed something in between those two albums to keep them in.
During that time, that is a wait too long, man.
Yeah, it's a wait too long. I mean, that's 3 years. That's 3 years, and I'm sure the record company was like, "Hurry up! You're missing out. You're missing out on a lot of stuff." And then Nevermind hits, and then they release something in 92, and it's already over.
All right, for your number one, and I'm so glad you chose this band. That is Black and Blue, a glam metal band from Portland, Oregon. The current members are lead vocalist Jamie St. James, bassist Patrick Young, drummer Pete Holmes, and guitarist Brandon Cook and Doug guitarist Brandon Cook and Doug Rappaport. The band is best known for their song "Hold On to 18" from their debut album Black and Blue, released in 1984. Other notable songs they have are "Chains Around the Heaven" and "Wicked Bitch." I thought these guys were originally from Canada. I got them confused with something else, but man, great choice. Why are they number one on your list?
So another band that had pretty good success, but just kind of missed just by a tad, right? So they weren't a hair metal band. They you watch their videos and they're sort of in between that hair metal and sort of LA Guns kind of look. Their tunes are just so damn catchy. Miss Mystery, Hold On to 18, I'll Be There For You. The hooks and the choruses just hit. They are sing-along songs, and the lyrics are great. In Miss Mystery, it's tied to the tracks, just waiting for the train. It's just everything hits, and they did have they had another hit called "Nature of the Beach," which is this great modern for the time surf rock song that just feels like you're at the beach, and it was on the Vision Quest soundtrack. It was in the movie.
Oh, okay, yeah, good movie. I remember that one.
Yeah, and it was actually on the B side of Madonna's "Gambler" that was on Vision.
Okay.
And it was featured in the movie, but from what I read, it was not on the soundtrack for some reason. So then they had one guy in the band that sort of stuck out like a sore thumb. His name's Jeff Warner. He's the guy second from left in the picture, and he and you see
the guy with the black hair.
No, the second from the left. So under the L and under the B and the L in Black and Blue.
Okay,
right?
The guy with kind of a mullet thing going on. Okay.
Yeah, right. He's got the fist out, right? This, right? He just kind of didn't fit. He looked like the local mechanic, right? He just grew his hair long. He didn't.
What instrument did he play?
He was a guitar player.
Okay.
He just kind of didn't fit in the band. And in the time that everything was about
was he a good guitar player though?
Great guitar player, and probably amazing human being. And here I am denigrating him. So after their second album, who comes in to be their producer but Gene Simmons, right?
Oh wow.
So he after them, I don't know if Gene ruined him or what, but there wasn't really a lot of positives after Gene. The first album he did that turned out to be a pretty well and had some hits on it, but after that they just sort of disappear. And the lead guitar player, Tommy Thayer, who's I think the guy on the left, he's actually in Kiss now.
Yeah.
So after him and Gene started working together, he became Kiss's tour manager. And then when they were in the reunited, with Ace and Peter, and then when Ace and Peter left, he just stepped right into the role.
Was he like a guitar tech, or you said he was a tour manager?
He was the tour manager, from what I understand. Tour manager, or assistant or something. He was not a guitar tech. He was just on the business side. And they break up in '89, and they still could have had more in them. And since they weren't glam and hair, they could have survived. Never.
He's still with Kiss though, isn't he?
He's still with Kiss.
Doing the final tour with them now.
And the lead singer of Black and Blue, Jamie St. James, he actually, I don't know if he still is, but he was in Warrant. He was the first person to replace Janie Lane.
Oh, that's who that was. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they have people who are, and they've done a couple reunion tours
I would love to see them reunite after he's done with his Kiss tour, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I would imagine that once Kiss is over, he's probably going to be like, now what? So I would see. I'm sure they would probably do well at Rocklahoma, and I mean they have 5 or 6 really quality songs that are just
Black and Blue, man. Great choice. Definitely a great choice. I would love to see more from them. Good choice for your number one, man. All right. Well, I've got a few. Let's check out mine. All right. I have a few of, let me do some honorable mentions here for the 80s rock metal bands that should have been bigger. And this is a band I actually saw live, and I was really impressed with them. They opened up for Bullet Boys when Bullet Boys was headlining a tour, with like smaller theaters and stuff like that. And the front, they're a rock band. They were formed in '84 in Kansas City, Missouri. And they signed with Sire Warner Brothers Records in '87. And they also signed a contract with Scott and Doc McGee of McGee Entertainment. Of course, they also managed Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, Scorpion, Skid Row. And their first release was Fire, which had a modest hit on MTV. Before I go on, Mike, do you remember these guys?
These are new to me.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, I remember the video and I really liked them. And when I went to go see them live, they almost upstaged Bullet Boys. Not quite, but man, they were good. And they also had a song called The Motion that was released, and they had this really great song on their album called Ritual. They kind of had the lead singer kind of had a Doors vibe, the way that he kind of did a little. Most of the band kind of picked a little 60s vibe to them and stuff. Yeah. But they had a nice blues sound to them, and really good. A lot of their songs had a good groove to them, and that was one of the things.
What year was it?
This was in '89 when I saw them. They opened up for Bullet Boys. And they toured with Bang Tango, Jason Bonham, Enough's Enough, Alice Cooper. But musically inclined is what I noticed about these guys, including the drummer. The drummer was fantastic. And I'll say the lead singer is Michael Serrano or Michael something like that. And he definitely had a Jim Morrison kind of vibe about him.
Yeah, I was going to say they almost look, the album cover almost looks like Pearl Jam-ish.
Yeah, I could see that. Definitely. Yeah. But man, they were good. I was really, really impressed. I was hoping to see a lot more from them. But I believe this was their only album that they released, and then they broke up. But I had to give them a shout out because I thought they were awesome. Cool. And I got a chance to see them live. The next band, Tora Tora. Mm-hmm. Wait, did I get this wrong here? Hold on. Nope. Tora Tora. Yes. Love this band. They're from Memphis, Tennessee, formed in 1985. Their first album came out in '89, Surprise Attack. They had another really good album called Wild America, which also had a song called Wild America out there called 92. They released an album in 94, and they released an album in 2019. Their debut hit, which had a lot of play on Headbangers Ball on MTV, was Walking Shoes. Hit number 86. Guilty was another song they had. Phantom Rider, Wild America, as I said, and also Riverside Drive was another song they had too. These guys had this really good Memphis blues sound, and I love the lead singer's tone and his voice. Do you remember these guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Walking Shoes is a great song. I mean, the end of Walking Shoes is just pure blues, pure straight blues. The end of it, the outro to it, great song. Should have, and when. A lot of times when I talk about these bands with my friends of that era, and we say, when did they come out? And then you say 89, and you go, oh, woof.
Yeah.
Oh, those poor guys,
89 was like the last hurrah for some of these bands, and then some of them were like, it was too late, Yeah.
When you hear 90 or 91, you're like, oh, well, forget it,
Yeah. I never got a chance to see them live, unfortunately. They still perform together. I see them on like the M3 Festival, and I see them all on those rock cruises as well. Yeah. One of these days, I hope I get to see them play. So yeah. All right. The next band I also got to see live and that is Electric Boys. First of all, have you heard of them?
It's all hips and lips, isn't it?
Yes,
Electric
they
Boys,
are a
yeah.
Swedish band
Mhm.
founded in 1987, playing funky hard rock with roots from the 70s and 60s
Yeah,
pop and
yeah.
psychedelia. They were formed by Connie Bloom, real name Bloomquist, and he was the guitarist and vocalist. And their one hit, All Hips and Lips, came out in 1987, had a decent run on MTV.
Mhm.
89, the band, debut, I think their debut album was Funk O Metal Carpet Ride, which includes All Lips and Hips. Success in Europe, they had a strong following in Britain. They were headlining small clubs. They included let's see, the album was released in America on Atco, including 5 new recorded tracks produced by Bob Rock and 5 tracks from the domestic version. Their critically acclaimed debut album spawned, of course, their self-produced top 20 single, All Lips and Hips. That got heavy rotation on MTV.
Mhm.
Their second album, Groovus Maximus, was also really good. Came out in 92, a little too late, but it was still a great album,
Yeah.
as we can say. And they toured with Mr. Big. And they've been touring constantly. They actually released an album in 2023 called Grand Explosivos, their
Wow.
5th album since the reunion in 2009. They also had a song called Psychedelic Eyes. Now, dude, I went to go see them in a really small club here in Santa Barbara, and Connie Bloom is basically this band. This guy is a guitar virtuoso. He is he's got great stage presence, great voice. Very underrated band and underrated artist. He probably could have gone solo. Maybe he has. I didn't look that far deep into it, but he loves playing with a band apparently. Man, this guy is it. He's basically like you don't have Electric Boys without this guy. Like you don't have Tom Kiefer. If you don't have Cinderella without Tom Kiefer. But he's got this there's this blues influence, and dude shreds on guitar, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, so, I mean that song kicks. I mean, that's one of those songs you hear that song like that, and you think, whatever happened? What didn't happen after that?
Yeah. But those are my 3 honorable mentions. Now let's get into my top 5, and number 5 for me is Dangerous Toys. Dangerous Toys is an Austin, Texas-based band. They founded in 1987. Dangerous Toys released 4 full-length albums and 1 live album before unofficially disbanding at the turn of the millennium. The band found mainstream success with its debut album, Dangerous Toys, in 89, which featured the singles Teasin' Pleasin' and Scared. It was certified gold by RIAA 5 years after its release. Their next 2 albums, Hellacious Acres and Pissed, 1994, were not as successful as the self-titled debut, but received acclaim. Although they have not released any new material since their 4th studio album back in 1995, Dangerous Toys have continued to perform live. And of course, their 2 big hits are Teasin' Pleasin' and Scared, but they also did a really cool cover of Bad Company's Feel Like Making Love. Really good. It's basically one of their ballads, and I think it was Hellacious Acres album, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to remember. I got a chance to see these guys. I think they opened up for Bang Tango or Bullet Boys when I saw them. They were so much fun, dude. So much fun. Have you seen them live?
I have not seen them live. They were they were a band that probably never even came close to Pittsburgh when I was growing up. Well, they just never.
It's kind of like the band Kix that never hardly came out to California.
Yes, I saw Kix a bunch of times because they were East Coast band.
Yeah.
But a lot of these bands, we never saw because Pittsburgh was just not a great market for hair metal. So, it just, the only way I would have seen that is if they opened up with somebody. I mean, I love Teasin' Pleasin'. I love Scared. Scared's a great song. I think maybe one of their downfalls is the band's name.
Yeah, possibly. I loved their the Jack in the Box kind of.
That's great. Their
mascot.
Great mascot. Our
I don't know.
kids walk around with a T-shirt that says "Dangerous Toys."
I think the name is good. Honestly, I think what held them back is maybe the lead singer, just because it's not a great voice.
Yeah,
but it's serviceable. But I think they are a better live band than what you get. I mean, the album's great. I love listening to the album, but man, they are fun live. And like in Tease and Please, and I love that exchange with like the guitar and the wah and the wham.
Yeah.
And it's a great song, but the lead vocalist is not the best vocalist. But
yeah, I mean he's not gonna the lead vocalist is like Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not gonna win your games. He's not gonna win your games, he's not gonna lose your games. He's just sort of he's just sort of there,
Yes, definitely. All right, the next band is one of my favorite bands, and that is DAD. They are a Danish rock band that were originally named Disneyland After Dark, but changed their name to avoid a lawsuit from some small company called the Walt Disney Company.
Mm-hmm.
In the early 80s in Copenhagen, DAD started playing together under their original name, Disneyland After Dark. Peterson came up with the band, he's the leader, based on the idea that when the lights are out in Disneyland, anything can happen. The first lineup of DAD consisted of Jesper, Stig, Peter, and Stig's girlfriend. The band's debut concert was at a youth club in December of 82. Lean Glimmer left the band, and the three of them kept playing together on March 3rd. In 84, Jesper's young brother Jacob joined the band in Copenhagen. The group made their international breakthrough in 1989 with the record "No Fuel Left for the Pilgrims" on Warner Brothers, and the song that was released that most fans know them by is "Sleeping My Day Away." Do you remember that song in that
band? I remember that one. Is that, wait, you go back. Was there a boyfriend girlfriend in the band?
There was a girl in the band. Yes. Yeah. Not anymore though.
which is very progressive for 1989 hair metal. I mean, that's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes. The current lineup is Jesper Binzer, Jacob Binzer, Stig Peterson, and Laus Son. The largest crowd the band played as an opening act was the Baz Ansk on their farewell festival on June 17, 2005. About 120,000 people on the Euro Speedway. Now, they did continue touring, and I know that for a fact because I'm wearing a shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've always wanted to see these guys play live. I bought their other albums, dude, and they never came to the United States to tour. I don't know why. Maybe they did.
Any shows in the United States?
I could be wrong about that, but maybe they came and played a few select shows. But I was waiting. I was that one DAD fan. I was waiting, and maybe even though the song was popular on MTV for a little bit, whatever it was, they're more popular in Europe and in like Malaysia and Australia and New Zealand than they are in the United States. And so when I went back last year to Australia, where my wife's from, they were playing in Melbourne, and they're playing in this kind of small club that's popular. I took my wife to go see it. She knew nothing about them. And it was crazy how long the merch line was. There was fans that had been waiting over 30 years to see these guys come back to Australia and play, and were buying up multiple shirts. I bought two.
Nice.
And they were fantastic. They even won my wife over. Let's put it that way.
All right.
And I have a picture here. Okay. This is the show. All right. Now, the bass player is famous for something.
Is that an Iron Cross?
What's that?
Is that an Iron Cross guitar?
Yes, it is.
Amazing.
Yes, it is. He has several custom basses. And if you look at that famous video from Sleeping My Day Away, it's a regular bass, but he only plays with 2 strings. And now he has custom basses that are built with a thin neck that only have 2 strings on them.
Okay. All right. Good for you.
Stig Peterson, a notable aspect, he's the bass player, is he almost exclusively uses 2-string basses. His basses awesome take extravagant shapes, such as an iPhone whose screen shows the audience. He didn't bring that one to the show.
That's amazing.
He didn't bring that show, but he had this translucent one that you see here on the right that would light up.
Yeah.
And those are the only 2 that he played, but all he plays with 2. But let me tell you, man, everyone at this show knew all the songs, even more than I did. Their show was fantastic, energetic. This was one of the best shows I've been to, and my wife loved it.
When you got a line out the door for your merch table, that is a good night.
Yes.
That was a good night.
Yeah. And they sold out all of their shows in Australia and in New Zealand. So yeah,
and that's
it was great.
Nuts that they've never been to America. That is so. Jeez, you gotta get out there. You gotta let people see you.
All right, the next band, number 3, and we've been talking about this band, is Sleaze Bees, a glam metal band formed in '87 in the Netherlands. They released 4 studio albums and 1 live album over a 9-year career before disbanding in 1996. Their '89 album, Screwed, Blued, and Tattooed, peaked at number 115 on the Billboard 200 album chart. Their song Stranger Than Paradise was a big hit on MTV and was taken from the Screwed, Blued, and Tattooed album. In 1982, after a long tour, they released the album Power Tool by Atlantic Records, which contains the ballad I Don't Want to Live Without You, which was a minor hit, and it's also one of me and my wife's songs.
Nice.
They were formed by drummer Jan Koster and guitarist Chris Van Jaarsveld in '87. In '89, the Bees got more stability by recruiting the English vocalist Andrew Elt, who previously sang on Gin on the Rocks. They cut the successful Screwed Blued album. On the strength of the hit single Stranger Than Paradise, the band did 90 headline shows throughout the U.S. and Canada. As I mentioned, their known songs are Stranger Than Paradise, I Don't Live Without You, and The Crowd Goes. Okay, Mike, I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember these guys at all back when MTV was a thing, back when Headbangers Ball was a thing. I don't remember them on the radio. Whatever happened, they went straight out of my radar, and I didn't pick them up until I was diving deep into hair metal back in the early 2000s while I was at a job. We're listening to an online hair metal station. And these guys came on. I'm like, who the hell are these guys? Ended up going on eBay and buying their CDs. Did you know about these guys?
Yeah, I did. And
were they an East Coast thing?
I was in college. No, they were on Headbangers Ball. I remember, it's not something I would have heard on the radio. So I remember I was in college. So it was, I'm going to say 90, 91, somewhere around there where they were on Headbangers Ball. So they came a little late to the party, right? But I loved Stranger Than Paradise. I thought it was an amazing song. And, fast forward years into the 2010s, my wife and I lived in the Netherlands for 3 years. And
really?
And I ran into somebody who said, I guess somehow came up that I was a metalhead, hair metal. And they said, that's so weird you say that because I work with a guy who says he was in a band called the Sleaze Bees. And, I was like, no way, you work with a guy who was in the Sleaze Bees? And this person, I think it was a girl, she said, yeah, I work with them, and I think we were learning Dutch together, and she was in one of our classes. And she said, yeah, I thought that he was lying. I thought he was making up the story that he was in this band. I said, no, I know the Sleaze Bees. So it was, I'm going to say it was 90, 91, because I was in college. And I don't know when they released that album with Stranger Than Paradise on it, but it was late to the game. That's another.
It was 89 when that one came out, and it hit. The album peaked at 115.
Yeah. But that was the Headbangers Ball. It was probably a late Headbangers Ball, like a 145, 150. But it played a couple times, enough for me to know the song. So it played enough.
I got to tell you, when it comes to hair metal ballads, I would have to say that I Don't Want to Live Without You is one of the best I've ever heard. Right. It is really, really good. I would put it in my maybe top 5, definitely top 10 hair metal ballads of all time. It is such a good song, which is why it's,
and I don't think that they're still around. I don't think they're still around.
I don't think so either.
Any festivals in Europe, I think they're done.
Yeah, I don't know if they've gotten back together. I would love to hear any news about that, but man, that was a cool band, and I think they should have been a lot bigger, bigger.
Agree.
Yeah. All right, the next band, number 2 on my list, and they have one of the most iconic hair metal songs of all time and video. That is Bullet Boys, American band from Los Angeles, formed in 1986. The group's original lineup was composed of Mark Torian, formerly of Rat, King Cobra, and Cagney and the Dirty Rats. Guitarist Mick Sueda, formerly of King Cobra. Bassist Lonnie Vincent, formerly of King Cobra. And drummer Jimmy DeAnda. The group released 2 successful albums and had a number of singles featured on MTV between 88 and 91. From the 90s onward, the group went through numerous lineup changes, with Torian as the only consistent member. Their most recent album, From from Out of the Skies was released in 2018. The original lineup reunited for one-off shows in 2011 and 2019. The song that I speak of, it's one of my favorite hair metal songs. I think it might be number 2, maybe close to 1 sometimes, and that is Smooth Up In Ya.
Yes, absolutely.
Great song,
Yep.
great video. They also did a OJ's cover for The Love of Money. Also, great Tom Waits cover, Hang On St. Christopher, which on their second album, and Talk to Your Daughter as well. Your thoughts on Bullet Boys?
Yeah, Smooth Up In Ya, great song. The lead singer was cut from the David Lee Roth cloth.
That's because they had Ted Templeton as their producer.
Yeah,
this was basically Van Halen Part 2-ish, if you can put it that way, you know?
Yeah, Van Halen, but the focus is on the lead singer more than the guitar player.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, Smooth Up In Ya, great song. They had a great look. He had a great look. Weren't in the glam thing, so they didn't get sucked into that. I agree with you completely. Should have been bigger.
The two things that stand out to me in this band, other than Mark Torrin, the lead singer, because he was a good front man, but Mick Sueda, the guitar player, was just kind of like dirty, grindy, bluesy, and the sound that he would get out of his Les Paul and his amp. But also Jimmy DeAnda is a fantastic drummer. If you watch him play live, he is awesome. And these guys just really put on a great show. I remember I saw them open up for Bang Tango, and then I saw them headline with the front, and I saw them once again somewhere else. I can't remember where it was. But later on, when Mark Torrin basically continued with the Bullet Boys, not only does Mark Torrin sing, but he now plays the lead and plays all of the main guitar parts. Now he has just like a rhythm guitar player that may play a few leads, but he plays all the guitar parts now.
Well, you could also be the guy in that picture who's the guy in the middle who's barely seen. I don't know what he played, but I would imagine when the album cover came out, he was probably a little upset. You know, the only people who would recognize him is probably his family. I mean, he's like
that's Jimmy DeAnda, the drummer, way in the back there. Yeah,
he's backlit. You could hardly see his face. You know, meanwhile the lead singer is right up in the front. He has the light shining on him brightly, and let's put the drummer way in the back. No one really cares about him.
Yeah, they had a great ballad off their second album. I think it's called "Sing a Song." Really good. Then they went back and then they kind of re-recorded some of their biggest hits again, because you know how bands will get out of contracts by re-recording their own version and doing it that way. So that was kind of cool. But even though the original lineup isn't all together, it was good to see Mark Torrin still doing his thing. And I got to give him credit. Not only is he still singing and sounding pretty good, but he's really good on guitar.
Yeah, they're still always on rock cruises and Rocklahoma. Yeah. They're always on there. They're staples. They're still out there, still trudging along. That's awesome.
Yep. All right. My number one pick of band that should have been bigger is also my favorite band of all time. I've seen them about 10 times now, and that is Bang Tango. Their hits, of course, Someone Like You is their big hit. Untied and True. My favorite song, Soul to Soul. Great live song, Love Injection, Dancing on Coals, Breaking Up a Heart of Stone. They were formed in Los Angeles in '88 and signed to MCA Records the same year. Initially, the band was founded by guitarist Mark Knight and bassist Kyle in '88. Knight wanted a second guitarist and recruited Kyle Stevens. At the suggestion of Rough Cuts Amir Derek, vocalist Joe Lestay joined the band as its frontman, which led to Lestay's childhood friend Tig Kettler completing the drummer Tig Kettler completing the 5-piece lineup as Bang Tango's drummer. The band began to play shows and gained a following on the Sunset Strip scene in Hollywood, packing all the popular clubs and venues at the time, which led to a bidding war with many labels. Bang Tango were then signed to MCA Records. And on a side note, they've had many other, of course, Joe Lestay has kind of taken on the band and become the only original member, and have had many other band members that have made up the lineup. And one of them is guitarist Drew Fortier. And I actually interviewed Drew Fortier because he played guitar for them for a while, and he actually did a movie Attack of Life, the Bang Tango movie. On June 11th, the band met Drew Fortier, to whom they offered to shoot a studio documentary while they were recording their new record, Pistol Whipped in the Bible Belt. The project was then expanded upon once Fortier had been put in contact with the previous members of the band, as well as its founding members. Over the course of 4 years, Fortier turned the project into a feature-length documentary titled Attack of Life, the Bang Tango movie. The film features interviews with all original members of the band, as well as most of the players who have performed in the band since its inception. I interviewed Drew Fortier on an earlier episode of the Hair Metal podcast. Check out the audio podcast. It's a great interview. And I found this fascinating because there's a great trivia about this band. As we know, the original band broke up after Love After Death, and which was a great album that did not get the support it deserved. And the documentary talks about that. It's a hard album to find. I know they released it over in Japan. And so it was Joe Lestay, the lead singer, that carried on the mantle of Bang Tango. Well, there was one gig that Joe Lestay, for medical reasons, could not continue the show. So there was a very good fan that said, hey, I can fill in. And I think he ended up singing like 5 or 6 songs.
Wow.
So there was a Bang Tango show that had no original members that played.
It's a tribute band. So they have the Bang Tango has a tribute band. Yeah. So make sure you watch this. It's free on YouTube. Give Drew a shout out too. He's also a budding director. He directed a really cool horror film called Dwellers, kind of a tribute to Chud. Remember Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dwellers? Absolutely.
Yes. Make sure you check that out too. I bought a copy of it. It's really, really good. So I have seen Bang Tango live plenty of times. They were a favorite of Ricky Rackman's Hollywood Cat House Club. They played there several times. I saw them play there. I seen them play up here in Santa Barbara. There's a funny story about that. I'll have to say it another time. But I love these guys. I love their sound. They got this kind of funk sound to them because Kyle, the bass player, is one of the best bass players I have ever seen live.
Yeah, they always came across to me like almost like extreme.
Right.
Very, very close to extreme. When you mentioned another band while you were talking about them called Rough Cut that almost made my list as well. Rough Cut was a great band. Bang Tango, that's another band that just came a little bit too late. And funny story, a coworker of mine, his English teacher in high school was one of the band members' mother.
Oh wow!
I don't know which one it was, but when they signed the record deal, she retired as a teacher. She was like, "My son's going to take care of me now. My son's a rock star, and I'm out." And so yeah, another great band had that MTV hit, and just I don't know if it came too late to the party or what it was.
I had a chance to meet Joe Lestay, and I think it was Mark Knight, briefly after they opened up for Bullet Boys down in Ventura, California, back in '89. And they were so popular, they ended up coming back and headlining the show, their own show there. But we heard that there was going to be an after party, a Bullet Boys after party at the hotel they were all staying at. So we went down to the hotel, and Bang Tango actually was like either getting ready to leave in their tour bus or whatever. So I actually talked to Joe Lestay, and I was asking him about their choice for choosing MCA Records and all that kind of stuff because I'd read an article about them. Yeah. And then I went on to go see them several times, but I ended up becoming friends with Mark Knight on Facebook. He lives down in LA. And he also made my list for underrated guitar players that I did a podcast with our friend Johnny K, because he's been Johnny K's been a guest on the Hair Metal podcast a few times now. And we chose our top underrated guitarists of that era. And Mark Knight was one of mine. And also found out he's a fellow Raider fan. And I actually interviewed him twice. And more recently, the band, all original members, got together for an upcoming tour through 2020. See where this is going. Yeah. And they actually held their first reunion tour at the Whiskey A Go Go on January 25th, 2020. And I went down there with my friends and bought a bunch of merch, and the show was fantastic, man. They had all their family and friends there, and they were getting ready to go onto this tour, play the M3 festival, and then the pandemic
and 2020 hit. Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the end. And then, you know, hard feelings kind of started to resurface again. And and Mark Knight, he's been doing his own music. He's in a band called Mark Knight and the Unsung Heroes, and Tig Kettler is his drummer, and he's got another great bass player and guitar player, and he's been performing and writing his own songs and releasing albums, and they're really good. I recently went and saw him open up for what was it, Little Caesar and Junkyard down in LA, and that was a great show. Yeah. And but back to the anniversary show, the reunion tour of all original members. Here's some pictures here. This is a poster of them promoting this tour and this thing. And there's the Bang Tango marquee up there with the Whiskey A Go-Go. And I didn't plan on meeting Mark Knight before the show. We were just going to get something to eat at the restaurant next door. And he was there hanging out. So I got a picture with him and chatted with him up a little bit. Mark Knight, cool. Great guy.
Very cool.
Very, very good musician too. Just a shout out to Bang Tango. What are your thoughts? What do you remember of Bang Tango?
Just that one video. I mean, I certainly I'm not as deep as into it as you. I mean, you're like the #1 super fan, you know?
Oh, yes.
Awesome. I mean, I remember them being in '88 and being sort of like that extreme look. They also had the look that kind of came across as like the Cult as well.
Yep.
Yeah, great band, great lead singer, and another, another casualty of the time, really, of that time. There's so many great bands that we talked about tonight that were just casualty of 88, 89, 90, 91, just in that little 3-4 year window. I mean, there's bands that survived it for sure. Your Poisons, your Motley Crues, but other bands who were, I mean, you think of those hair metal bands, there's not too many bands that survived that grunge era,
This is another picture at the Whiskey A Go. This is a live picture here.
That's very cool.
I took that one there. Yeah.
I mean, and they had another band with a great look, Bang Tango, which is a great look. Not glam, just very cool, very hip. Getting into the 90s.
Their sound they had was just fantastic. Yeah. I did want to give a shout out to Joe Lestay. He had a really cool band in the early 2000s called Beautiful Creatures. Do you remember that band?
That I've heard of.
Yeah, they had a really good album that came out, and then for whatever reason they broke up. But it was a really, really good album. I highly recommend that. But shout out to Mark Knight. He obviously was cool enough to get on the podcast, and I interviewed him after that reunion. And his thoughts on it in the show. That is on the Hair Metal Podcast link inside the Fandom Podcast Network website there. So make sure you check that out. That was before we got on YouTube, so it's the audio only, but it was definitely a good show. So, yeah. All right, well, let's close things out here.
Super.
Just wanted to take a minute here to go back to that article of some of the other bands that was briefly mentioned of that should have been bigger. I'm just going to roll these off real quick. Axe, Banshee, Baton Rouge, Bo Nasty, Black Sheep, Cat and Boots, Circle of Power, Cold Sweat, Crimson Glory, Cry Wolf, Diamond Rex, Dirty Blonde, Demals, Femme Fatale, Fifth Angel, Giant, Gafaria. I keep forgetting how to pronounce those guys. Gifria, thank you. Gypsy Rose, Halloween, Hawk, Heaven, Heavy Pettin, Hellion, Hurricane, Jack Stars, Burning Star, Kick Axe, Killer Dwarves, King Cobra, Kings of the Sun, Laz Rocket, Le Mans, Leatherwolf, Lion, London, Lord Tracy, Mars Project, Driver, Madam X. That, of course, famous because that was Sebastian Bach's first band. And Roxy Petrucci, who went on to do Vixen. Malice, Mama's Boys, Mass, Odin, Omen, Paul Diano's Battle Zone, Princess Pang, Prophet, Rage of Angels, Soraya, great female singer there. Sabotage, one of my favorite bands.
Mm-hmm.
Sea Hag, Seduce, Shock Paris, Shark Island, Shotgun Messiah, Silent Rage, Sinners, Slave Raiders, Smash Gladys, Sound Barrier, Stone Fury, Sweet Pain, Sweet Savage, Sword, TT Quick, Talos, I think so, TKO, Tokyo Blade, Tough Luck, Titan, Vamp, Warrior, Wasted, White Sister, White Tiger, and White Wolf.
Yeah, I knew a good portion of those. There were some good ones in there that I knew, that were really only one hit wonders. That were just like Baton Rouge. I remember.
Yeah, I remember Shark Island. Horrible name, but actually they were a good band.
yeah, that's another horrible name. You always have to remember. Kids are gonna want to wear your T-shirts with their name on it, with your name.
Yes.
On it, and I mean that's what you got to remember. And there's not very many kids are gonna walk around with a T-shirt that says Shark Island.
Exactly. Well, this has been the Hair Metal Podcast, episode 20, 80s rock metal bands that should have been bigger, here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Mike, thank you so much, man, for joining me for this. This has been a blast. Any final thoughts on the 80s bands that should have been bigger?
No, I mean, I think we've covered it all, and I would encourage everyone to go out there and find, because there's every year I find a new band that I think, why didn't I know about them earlier? Why didn't I hear this song? Why didn't I hear that song? So there's still so much from that era that's out there to discover. That's really great stuff.
I'm still a collector of CDs, and if I see these CDs live or somewhere, but some of them are expensive. They're out of print. They're hard to find. The hair metal genre has a rabid collector fan base too, especially having the original physical media.
Yep.
It's easy to find they're thank God for YouTube too, because some of these bands didn't have videos. So you would you go to YouTube and they would just have the audio version of their song or live versions of their songs, you know? Yeah. Gosh. Ugh, good stuff.
Good time. It was a good time. I'm happy to be alive during that time. I mean, there's with the people who say rock is dead, me being a middle school teacher, I can assure you 100% that rock is not dead. I see kids walking through there with new bands, with old bands, bands that they know because their big brother or uncle or dad or mom listened to. And there's a lot of great bands out there today who are still carrying the torch that people just have to, you just have to look for it.
And it starts with the parents too. It starts with the parents. And I want to encourage people here. Listen, hear me out here. You may see a young kid wearing a band shirt that obviously was popular during this time. Don't give them a hard time and saying, name a song off that album, Encourage them, ask them though. Say, hey, are you a fan? And they'll go either yes or no and say, well, check out this album if you are. Encourage them to listen to it, because when we're dead and gone, it's up to them to keep this genre alive. And we lived during a good time of music, and I'm proud to it. And to me, it's still the best. I had so much fun memories with that. So make sure
there's kids that I see every day in my school when we have dress down days. They wear uniforms, and they have dress down days. They show up in Ghost T-shirts. They show up in Lorna Shore T-shirts. Some new metal bands, and some of them wear Nirvana shirts. I mean, the Nirvana shirt is huge. And I always tell them, do you know the band? If they say no, I say, do yourself a favor, go home tonight and listen to it.
You got YouTube. Everything's so accessible now. It's great. So
a couple of years ago, I taught Pink Floyd in my 7th grade class. I did Dark Side of the Moon. And I told them, I said, your assignment this weekend is to go home with a really good pair of headphones and listen to Dark Side of the Moon the whole way through. And a couple kids actually did it, and it turned them into Pink Floyd fans, which, you make that Pink Floyd turns into this, and all of a sudden they're metalheads.
That is called a teaching win right there. Well done, sir.
It is.
Well done.
Yes, it was.
All right, let's get in some contact information. This is the Hair Metal Podcast on the Fandom Podcast Network. First of all, please join our Hair Metal Podcast Fandom group on Facebook. Please, we have a lot of good discussion there and share a bunch of great videos and pictures of this era. And we appreciate more members there. And also, please, if you're listening to this, check us out on YouTube. Please please subscribe. We're going to get more of these podcasts out on a regular basis, and that would help us out if you guys did that. Our master feed for all of our audio versions of our podcast can be found at fpnet.podbean.com. And if you want to see the earlier or listen to the earlier episodes of Hair Metal, just click on the tab for shows and hit Hair Metal, and you can see the recent interviews that I did and all the other fun topics that we covered with Hair Metal. And of course, the Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network. We'd appreciate that. And the Hair Metal Podcast is also on Twitter at Hair Metal Cast. You can also email us at hairmetalpodcast@gmail.com. And also, if you go to TeePublic, you can pick up some Hair Metal logo t-shirts as well. That supports us, so we appreciate that. Again, this is episode 20 of the Hair Metal Podcast, 80s rock metal bands that should have been bigger. Mr. Mike Zimmer, thank you so much. Please let our listeners and viewers know how to get a hold of you.
Well, you can get a hold of me right through the Facebook page, the Hair Metal Fandom Facebook page. I'm on there. You could just reach out to me, Michael Zimmer, on Facebook. Always up for talking some metal.
Awesome, man. Appreciate that. My name is Kevin Reitzel. You can find me on Twitter, which is now X, Instagram, and Threads at Spartan_Phoenix. You can also find me in the Hair Metal group because I'm posting and sharing all kinds of fun related topics there. You can also find me on the Fandom Podcast Network, where I also co-host several other shows on the network, including Highlander Podcast, Bloody Kings, our movie podcast, Couch Potato Theater, and Time Warp. I'm co-hosting Culture Clash with my buddy Kyle. Union Fed Podcast, which is our Star Trek and Orville. We got a lot of great fandoms underneath the Fandom Podcast Network umbrella. Please join us. Thank you, Mike, so much, sir. Appreciate your time, brother.
Absolutely. It was a blast. Thanks for having me. I'm
Kevin. Join me again next time here on the Fandom Podcast Network for the next episode of the Hair Metal Podcast, where we will tease our hair with Aquanet, slip on those tight ripped jeans, leather pants, or lip service attire, and rock out in that leather motorcycle jacket. Remember, every rose has its thorn, and on a steel horse we will ride. Hair Metal lives! Goodbye, everyone.